This entitled kid is about to destroy an entire computer system in an office building. This guy just wants to do his job, and dealing with entitled parents and kids was not in the job description. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. I found out about this sub from Reddit YouTubers VoiceyHere and Fresh, and boy do I have a story to tell. Strap yourself in for a fun one. So my story takes place about a year ago, maybe around March or April. I work in the IT department, and my office used to have a bring your kid to work day, which I was excited about. Not having kids of my own, I enjoyed seeing other people bring their kids to work, and it would make the day a little more interesting. I started off fine when I had driven to work, and I saw a bunch of my co-workers walk in with their sons and daughters. The oldest kid there had to be 8 or something. I did my usual routine and took the elevator up to the IT floor. I should preface this by saying that I work in a large open plan office, and we in the IT department have our own floor. Since we kind of run the show technology wise, we don't even have that many people working in IT. Not counting my boss, the department head, we had 10 people in our department. So when I head up to my floor and check in, wave at my co-workers and sit back down at my desk, I was a little disappointed since there were no kids on our floor. Most of us didn't have kids, and those of us who did were very, very young, like infants. My boss did have a 6-year-old son who was delightful to have around, but he wasn't there. Anyway, I was working on replacing the fans on someone's laptop when I heard screaming and squealing. I turned my head and saw this little boy running around the office, making noise and constantly bumping into things. Introducing our entitled brat. I stopped him and looked at him. Hey little guy, who might you be? I'm EB. Did you take a bath in duty today? For context, I'm Indian. I guess I sort of perpetuate the stereotype of an Indian IT guy. I laugh it off. No, I did not. Where is your mummy or daddy? Upstairs, poop face. Do you know your mummy and daddy's name? EB shakes his head and tries to start hitting me. So at this point, I'm getting kinda annoyed. I stop him and then lift him up and look out over at my office. Does anyone know whose child this is? People look up and shake their head. Since he said their parents were upstairs, they likely didn't work in IT. I thought EB probably just got bored and wandered to the elevator and found himself here. Since we didn't know whose kid it was, we thought we might as well keep him here. Since he was a little kid, I figured that he would get bored really quickly. I put him down and told him to stay put and to not touch anything, since I was still working on fixing a computer. Now our floor is basically split into 3 main rooms: a conference room, the main office area, and a back room where we kept our extra hardware for any computer fixes. A shelf full of loaner laptops for workers to borrow when we're fixing their computers. A shelf where we leave open and closed repair tickets, and it's also where we house our servers. I went into that back room to get EB a loaner computer so he could play some games or whatever it is kids do, and I log in with my master key. I come back only to find that the computer I was working on was on the ground, and my tools were scattered everywhere. I was mad, but I didn't want to take it out on the kid. Thankfully, nothing else inside the computer was harmed. I cleaned up my desk, brought EB into the glass-walled conference room where everyone could watch him, and continued on with my day. You'd think everyone would be fine from there, but oh no, we are just getting started. It turns out little boys have the attention span of goldfish, and after 30 minutes of playing on the loaner, he was running around the office, disturbing my co-workers and doing whatever he wanted. Even my boss, who is the coolest and calmest lady on the planet, was starting to get annoyed with EB's antics. You'd think that would be the limit to what EB could do, but this little gremlin was just warming up, I guess. In the middle of the day, I was working on writing up a quality report on our computers for our meeting with the computer company next month. It was going well, and I hadn't heard anything from EB in a while. Suddenly, I heard some commotion coming from the front of the office, and I walked over to see what was going on. There was a whole mob of workers from other departments at the front of our office where my boss typically was. The following ensued. CW is co-workers, B is boss, IT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are other IT workers. Our connection's getting all weird and our desktops are glitching out. What the heck is going on? Please calm down everyone. We'll get this sorted as soon as we can. Hey, come to think of it, my computer isn't working so well either. Yeah, me too. My boss looks at them. Alright, maybe it still might be isolated to a couple of floors. IT 2, 3, 4, 5, go to the other floors and check this out. OP and IT 1, you two check the server room. The other IT guys head to the other floors to do a quick check on everything. IT 1 walks over to my desk to talk to me. Have you seen EB lately, OP? I could have sworn he was with you. Maybe he got bored of us and decided to bug accounting or something, and I thought you were watching him. IT 1 just laughed. Yeah, like I'd spend more than 5 minutes with that little monster. Who the heck raised him? We both have a good laugh about how EB is the worst, but then we both stop as if we both just had the same thought. We looked at each other. Our faces turned serious. Hey, you don't think that he, no, there's no way he could have. Yeah, right? Besides, somebody probably locked the door to the server room, right? The server room doesn't have a lock. Instantly, our expressions turn into a look of pure horror. We ran over to the server room, hoping to God that we were wrong. But the moment we opened the door, my heart sank. What we saw made IT scream. What the heck? EB was sitting in front of the server racks, laughing and giggling at what he had just destroyed. We ran over to look at the damage, and I could have cried if I wasn't so angry. That little brat had almost ruined our company. It smelled foul in there because EB had peed on the servers and had taken a poop in the middle of the room. Motherboards were fried, wet cables were dangling from their cages, and hard drives were almost falling out, hanging on for dear life by their SATA and data cables. We were distraught. To make things even worse, the little brat that did this was still laughing. IT1 lost his self-control and grabbed the kid by the shirt and dragged him outside. The entitled brat was still laughing like a maniac. You think this is funny, you little monster? EB started to cry. Mommy! You're in a lot of trouble, kid. IT1 and I took the kid to the front of the office, where my boss was still dealing with an even bigger crowd of ticked-off workers. We walked over and dumped the kid on the ground in front of them. Before we could explain to everyone what happened, the boy ran into the crowd and I saw him stop and hug a woman's leg. It was her, the entitled parent. If looks could kill, she'd be stabbing the three of us with razor-sharp knives. What the heck did you do to my little boy? Are you his mother? Well, your brat basically ruined this company. Calm down, what's the situation? How bad is it? We got fried hardware and disconnected servers. I think he got to our router too. The hard drives might still be good, but we are definitely going to need to build a new server. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Also, he took a dump in the middle of the room. Not damage related, but I feel like it's important. The entitled parent just laughed and gave us a cocky smirk. Oh, now you're just pulling my leg. Entitled brat is an absolute angel and is always the best behaved and smartest in his class. IT1 is furious at this point. His face was bright red and he was shaking. He kinda looked like Alex Jones. I beg to differ, miss. Your son has been here disturbing co-workers all day, has been semi-abusive to them, and to top it all off, he destroyed our server room. Stop lying. EB would never do that. You can't prove it. I bet it was him. The entitled parent points to me. You know how those people are. They're all subhuman. That's why him and all you idiots are down here doing these menial jobs. I wanted to scream at this lady. Not only was she being racist towards me, but also condescending of everyone in my department. I also noticed that the crowd seemed to be much smaller, as they had all left to go back to their respective floors. It was just me, my boss, IT1, EP, and EB, and the rest of the IT staff. At this point, IT1 just freaking explodes. How dare you? You come down here and condescend to us? Start being racist? And you can't even control your own darn kid. Did you even know he was down here? From that point, the entitled parent at IT1 got into a screaming match that lasted maybe a minute before my boss cut in. That's enough from the both of you. IT1, I understand how you feel, but you need to calm down. As for you, miss, I have access to security camera footage on my laptop, and I'd be more than happy to show you the damages your son cost us. You will have to compensate for any and all damages he cost so that we may build a new server to get the company back on its feet. In addition, I'll see to it that you get sent to human resources for your hateful remarks towards my employees. employees. Now, come with me. My boss then dragged the entitled parent and her kid down to her office where she could show her the footage. That woman is my freaking hero. Between that and an incident that took place recently about me living at work, a story for another day, she's been nothing but kind and understanding to me and the other technicians. I think it's safe to say that I owe her my life, and I'd take a bullet for her, as would anyone else. The entitled parent was fined for all damages that the entitled brat had created. She was taken to HR for the remarks against me and everyone else in my department, and was subsequently fired. Thankfully, most of the hard drives were okay, and IT1, 2, and I eventually did end up building a new server, and it took us a month to get the company back on track. Everything worked out in the end. Justice was served. Oh, and we don't have a bring your kid to work day anymore. Thank you so much to Kyubi Blade for this epic fan submission. Just a reminder, if you'd like to submit your story that might make it on the show, you can do so in the subreddit r/VoiceyHere. The link is in description. My mum was definitely down on her luck. Her parents practically disowned her when they found out she was pregnant with my amazing big sister, only to come back into her life like nothing happened when my sister was born. My mum also found out she was pregnant like 5 months into her pregnancy because she still had a period, wasn't gaining weight, and didn't have morning sickness. So imagine her surprise when a physical exam while preparing for the army, my mum was told she was pregnant. This left my mum basically completely on her own for around 4 months. The only person in our family who talked to and supported my mum in this time was my aunt. Eventually, after my sister was born, my mum still didn't get much help. My family didn't really care for my mum, they just wanted my sister. My mum struggled her butt off to take care of my sister before she was even born. She was working 3 jobs and still couldn't afford a place to stay. At the end of every week, she would buy something a baby would need. A thing of diapers, a pair of clothes, anything, because she didn't want her baby to be neglected because she couldn't afford things. She went to soup kitchens and was a recipient of multiple charities. That continued even after my sister was born. I should mention, during this time, my mum was a full-time student who was working her butt off to get an associate's degree in nursing, and to give my mum credit, many of her teachers told her she wouldn't graduate. She did, and she did it to take care of my sister. Because my mum was working and going to school, she needed a babysitter, but didn't know if she could afford one. One of the people my mum worked for, though, told her about people who babysat her kids. My mum was desperate and immediately went to the people that I, later on in life, would call Nana and Pop. So needless to say, it went well. These people went above and beyond though. They offered my mum an insanely cheap price to babysit, and when my mum asked if she knew any cheap places nearby she could stay, after explaining her situation, they let her buy an old trailer they owned for a little over $1,000. She of course was allowed to make payments and would need to pay for the lot it sat on, but they also gave it to her furnished. Long story short, when my mum got back on her feet, she bought a better house and it was time to sell the old trailer. My mum had been approached by an old friend who asked if my mum knew a cheap babysitter and a place to stay. My mum saw herself in the woman that asked her, so my mum made a decision to rent out the old trailer to this woman, her husband, and their 2 kids, one of which was a newborn. My mum took a few pieces of furniture that Nan and Pop were insistent we take with us, but otherwise she left it furnished for them. The family told my mum they planned to buy it in a year, and after a year was over, they sadly couldn't afford the agreed upon price. They said they would pay for another year of renting, and then they would pay to buy it. Apparently they were very desperate. My mum told them to calm down and that she would just give it to them. They tried to force my mum to take the money that they saved to buy the place, but she turned them down. She wanted to pass the good karma on, I guess. Apparently this family told a few friends about their guardian angel, aka my mum, who gave them a trailer after they rented it for a year because of how many financial issues they were facing. But an entitled parent apparently didn't think this was fair. She snooped around and found our address and knocked on the door of our house. My dad opened the door and asked if she needed anything. The exchange, as I'm told, basically went like this. I need this house. Excuse me? Your wife gave a house to a friend of mine, and because I have a kid, I need a house too. I want this house. My dad then slammed the door in her face. This lady proceeded to keep banging on the door. This time, my mum answered while holding my 4-year-old sister. Why are you banging on my door? Are you this person? Yes. You owe me your house. What? You gave my friend a house because she has kids. I have a kid. I deserve a house. Look, I don't know who you are to come to my house and demand that I give it to you, but you need to leave.
This isn't fair. You gave my friend a house.
A, that was a completely different situation, and B, I don't owe you any explanation.
You owe me a house. I have kids.
I owe you nothing. Now get off my property before I call the cops. She didn't leave, but the cops were called and she was escorted off the property. She apparently came back a few times, but my mum ended up filing a restraining order. She talked to the people she gave the house to, and the lady that harassed my family was practically blacklisted. At that time, we lived in a small town, and everyone knew what she did. No one wanted anything to do with that entitled parent. Why do entitled parents seem to lack a sense of scale? They'll hear of a story where someone was generous and did something in a small way, and they can never put things into perspective. So what does this entitled parent do? She demands the house that somebody's living in. I mean, if her friend told her a story how this lady was giving away houses, then may as well try, right? I don't know, do they just think to themselves,
you know what, I'll always regret this day if I never try asking this lady for her house.
The last flight I was on was an uncomfortable cross-country American flight with the worst pitch and seat width ever. No one was happy, everyone was crammed. The configuration of steerage was 3x3, so middle seats abounded and were generally full. One middle seat was occupied by Mombi and a rather old lap baby. Seriously, this kid was at least 18 months. Mombi was sitting next to an older man in the window seat, and the aisle seat was empty. Mombi then moved to the aisle seat and claimed it for her own. Eventually, a steward noticed, because the aisle seat was for a very special passenger who was boarding last. Excuse me ma'am, said the steward, but I need to ask you to take your seat.
I'm sitting here, said the entitled Mombi. I have a baby. I can't sit in the middle.
This is someone else's seat, ma'am, said the polite steward.
I have a baby,
Mombi repeated, bouncing her fussing giant crotch monster. I see that, said the steward, but someone else is sitting in your seat, and we can't switch seats now as we're about to take off. After we're up and the seatbelt signs are off, you can ask him to switch seats.
No,
screeched the Mombi.
I have a baby. I can't sit in the middle seat.
Sorry ma'am, said the steward, infinitely patient, but you need to be in your assigned seat. I don't make the rules. Please help me out here.
Please help me out here, said the Mombi. I have a baby.
Sorry ma'am, but the passenger whose seat you're in can't sit in the middle. He's riding with a large dog.
A dog?
Screeched the Mombi.
I have a baby. I cannot sit next to a dog.
The steward finally decided that he was just going to do whatever he needed to get rid of his problem, the Mombi. So he arranged her to switch seats in a complicated musical chair move. So the lady with her baby ended up near her husband, up several rows. The old man by the window got upgraded to first class for free. Good for you, old dude. No more screechy lady and her fussy baby for you. And dude with the dog got the entire row to himself, which he needed because he had literally the largest dog I've ever seen. Looked like a Great Dane. Doggo laid on the floor and his body stretched across all 3 seats. I'm sad Mombi basically got what she wanted, but I'm glad guy with dog and old man didn't have to put up with her. Freaking Mombis. And by the way, the people she ended up next to were miserable because, as you'd expect, the baby fussed and was allowed to touch people and be obnoxious the entire flight. Why do airplanes seem to be a magnet for entitled parents? I don't know if it's because conflict is more likely to arise, simply because everything's cramped, people are impatient, just seems to bring out the worst in people. Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.